Back.
Hi, Daniel.
How you doing?
Good.
I'm here.
Guys,
I'm back.
Good. Can you guys believe this is the last day of August? Isn't that crazy?
Tomorrow is September.
What a year this month has been.
Usually, like, if I
That
were in
was good.
class, I would always joke and say, like, after tonight, I would always say, see you guys next month. And literally, next month is tomorrow. Yeah, I don't know. This is, nothing's normal about this year at all, but this summer,
Right.
it's just so fast. It's just crazy. But you kind of get into these routines where it's just, you got to keep busy doing something. But anyway, all right. Can everybody see? I've got exercise 2.5 on the screen. And I'm going to show you something here in a minute, but as long as you can see that there's going to be 8 transactions. And before I actually do this, you can see right here, here's your accounting equation. You got your assets, they got cash, accounts receivable and equipment, liabilities, you've got accounts payable, and then they've got 3 equity items here. What I would like for you guys to do, if you got it like a sheet of paper, is to go ahead and draw out horizontally, draw out this accounting equation, just like they've got it in this problem. And what I'm going to give you tonight, I got these templates. I made a template for this problem. Let me show you this real quick. I went ahead and made this template. It's in Excel, and I'm going to put it in Blackboard. But tonight, as I go through this problem, I'm going to use this kind of like as my working paper. But I'll give this to you. You can go in and use this and print it off later on. But for now, you're okay if you just write this out manually. But as we go through this problem, I'm going to kind of go back and forth between this screen and the problem screen because, again, we got 8 transactions. I want to show you, again, the increase, decrease, and how it affects each account. And I'm going to take this problem, and we're going to put together the 3 financial statements as well. It's very simple. There's not a lot going on. And I think if you can see how these financial statements are put together just using 8 transactions, later on, when you're doing a more comprehensive problem where you might have 10 to 15, 20 transactions in a problem, hopefully you won't get lost in the mix. But write out this equation. Again, I'm going to be going back and forth between these 2 screens. Just write out this top part. Just put assets and then list the 3. Have 3 different columns. And you have liabilities, which is accounts payable. That's the only one we're going to have. And then have capital, revenues, and expenses. Okay, so give you a moment to do that. And I can see, I don't see all your videos, but I'm assuming, I think you're writing it out. I'll give you another minute or so. Just write out that equation. Doesn't have to be perfect. Just make sure you got the times. Make sure that the important thing is after tonight, you can go back and read it. That's the important thing.
Okay, wait, write out what equation? I was looking for my pen.
Yeah, write out, I've got the screen shared right now. Write out this accounting equation just like that.
Okay.
And you don't worry about if you don't have all the different lines, like this is an Excel spreadsheet worksheet. Don't worry about that. Just make sure you got this basic setup. We're going to go through these transactions and I'll show you how to do the analysis again.
Okay, lay down and go sleep.
It's like I was thinking about this the other day, you know, when I record all my illustrations. I record the homework.
I'm gonna eat that.
Illustrations and connect for you guys. When I was in school, this is back when I was getting my undergraduate degree in accounting. I had a couple professors that they would literally talk so fast that I would be furiously scribbling down my notes. I would be recording their lecture at the same time. And then after the class, I would literally spend a couple hours rewriting my notes because they were so messy. And I'm just thinking to myself, it was such chaos back then. And I just kind of wish I would have had some of this stuff back then. It would have made it so much nicer. I mean, the point is that you guys, I mean, I wish I had this stuff back in my day because I could have focused more on analyzing than just trying to memorize. Back in the early, in the 80s and the 90s, when you went through some of these accounting programs, they were all about memorizing, and it was just crazy. And it got to the point where you kind of sacrificed understanding any of it. You just memorized it, and then hopefully you passed. And then they just think the analysis will come later. And it's a terrible philosophy, terrible.
I mean, that's how a lot of my classes were, which is why I ended up having to buy a recording device.
They still do that?
Yeah, you could buy these off of like Amazon, and so it was like $20, but I had to buy one because I couldn't keep up with how fast my professor was saying everything we needed to know.
And you know, the problem with that is you assume that your professor, of course, they're an expert in it because they've only done it like 1,000 times, right? So they know it backwards and forwards. And you've seen it for the first time. And so I think, you know, and I try not to go too fast because, you know, guys, I've done this so many times, but you know, if I'm doing this for the first time, I always say, man, if I'm going too fast, just let me know and I'll go back. But even that, I'm also recording this, so you can also go back and play this as well. So I think you guys kind of have the best of both worlds. But
I do have another question. Do you know of any resources that we could use that will just pull up like transactions so that we could do these as like a study help?
Right.
I'll look. I'm not sure if there's anything. I'll look and connect and see if they've got anything.
Okay, just to do like practice questions, like a fill
Like-
out, like how this is in the book.
They've got the homework
Well, that's
viewpoint of it.
Right, but if
use.
like even after the homework, if you're not like catching on, because like I know I'm not strong at math. That's something that
Me neither.
I struggle with, and I'm taking this for, you know, a funeral service degree.
Right.
And so,
I'm here for FE too.
right? Hey, so
Yeah.
I struggle with this stuff, and I want to practice more.
Well, I would suggest, here's one thing. I mean, it may not answer all your questions, but the default is when you go and do the Connect homework, like you'll see in chapter 1, it was just, you know, you have to answer the questions. In chapter 2, you're going to have problems where, yeah, you're going to have to pull down the drop-down list and enter the numbers. But keep in mind, I've actually already illustrated every single homework problem you have to turn in for credit. So you actually guys have all the answers to all the homework ahead of time. And that's not telling you should go and just copy them. That's not the learning. The point is I put those on a blackboard. So let's say you're in Connect and you get stuck on homework problem number 5. You can go into Blackboard and find that problem, and I've already illustrated it for you. All right, that's one thing that'll help. The other thing I'll just kind of add is the reason I gave you all of those ebook solutions is that, you know, I can't work every single problem in the back of the book. I'm going to work as many as I can tonight to wrap this up. But you can always go to the applications at the end of each chapter, okay? And you've got the access to the solutions to those in Blackboard. Now, you don't have those, every one of them illustrated, maybe like you might like, but you would just have to, you know, either create your own template or write out on a piece of paper and practice these, but you can at least have access to those problems, which are extra problems that you might need for practice. All right, but I'll look and see if Connect has anything else. There's a couple other things I was looking in their resources that I haven't used. If I can find some more stuff, what I'll do is I'll add it into Blackboard or I'll add it into Connect, and I'll let you guys know where it's at if I can find it.
And in Connect, they have a homework quiz, a homework quiz before a homework exercise before the homework quiz. And that has pretty much of the same information that you're going to see in the quiz, but it takes you through to do various types of exercises as you're doing here tonight.
Right, and I think they call them like review practice quizzes or something to that effect. And what I've done, the way, this is just my style, and other instructors can do it differently, but there is just a vast amount of resources out there. And I thought, you know, if I just blast everything at you guys and say, here's everything, here's the whole world, you go find what you need. Sometimes I think that can also be confusing as well. I think sometimes if everything's just thrown at you, you may not know exactly what's the most important thing to help your learning. And everybody has maybe a different learning style. So what I've done is I simplify it and I say, look, you got homework and quizzes. I practice with you in these lectures. I try to illustrate as best I can. I record everything. It's your job then to also go and practice. And this is how you get good at this stuff. You practice it. And then the fallout is if you're still confused and I cannot find other resources to help you, you can always try to schedule a meeting with me and I can try to sit down and give you some assistance as well. That's kind of like how I've always tried to play, because it's just, there's so many, you know, the learning style of everybody could be a little bit different, and I'm just trying to accommodate all styles. So, all right, so let's get to the prompts. So let's go back. So I'm back on the screen. So let's start off with this first one. We got 8 transactions, 1 through 8, and let's start with number 1. So we've got Jesse Campbell started the business with a cash investment of $120,000. So you got to say, okay, how do these fit into this equation? So with that $120,000, that's a cash investment. What's going to happen to cash? Is it going to increase or decrease cash? What does everybody think?
It's going to increase.
So
Increase.
right, $120,000 under cash. And then what's the other effect? What's the offset to that? It's going to go where? Does anybody know?
Capital is going to be $100,000, $120,000.
Got it. So you'd have cash 120, capital 120. Now, if I were to go to my screen, which I'll go back and forth there, I go back to my screen. And so what I'll do is I'm going to go ahead and type in 120,000. Whoops. And then capital. And let me change my format so it's easier for you guys to look at.
Trash.
Let me move this to the bottom. Hold on just a second. I can. Change that. All right. I don't even need 2 decimals because everything here is rounded off. I should keep the numbers nice and simple here. There we go. All right, so I would have cash 120, capital 120. So what I'll do is I'll kind of go back and forth. So that's our first one. Okay, let's go back to the second one. We've got, looks like purchased equipment for $44,000 on credit. So equipment we've seen, we know equipment is an asset. Is that going to increase or decrease? What do you think?
That's going to
Increase.
I'm hearing increase. Good.
Yeah.
So 44.
So increase cash and equipment.
Not cash. Not cash.
increase
This is
equipment.
Equipment and accounts payable.
Jay,
Accounts payable. Okay.
you got it. So increase equipment, increase accounts payable, 44,000. So I'm going to go to my screen, and I'm going to say equipment, 44,000, accounts payable, 44,000. And that's it.
Okay.
And then let me just get all my formatting changed right away so we know that. All right. That's all you got. Notice we're still balanced. All right. Third one. We've got perform services, 6,200 in cash. So we know cash, and perform services is going to be
Revenue.
revenue. So cash will what? Increase or decrease? What do you think? Anybody?
Increase.
Increase.
You got increased cash, and then the revenue part of it will also increase by 6,200. So I will go to my cash. This is again transaction number 3. I'll say 6,200, and I'm just putting that in as a positive. And then I'm going to go to revenue, and there you have it. So I've got 6,200 in cash, 6,200 in revenue.
I get confused at not saying that I don't understand where they go. It's the plus and minuses that
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's and just as we practice, and then go back and review it, because I think once we've done a few of these, that's really how you're going to get it, is just kind of keep going back and forth and thinking about it. Okay. So like right now, if you see if I enter 6,200 right now in this spreadsheet, assume that's a positive. If you're writing this out, just put a plus in front of that. Okay. And then in a moment, we'll get to some decreases in a moment. I believe we'll have some outflows of cash. Okay. But yeah, just to comment on, yeah, just as we practice these, study them and think about it. And then when you do more practice and more study, you'll get, that's how you learn. And if you don't get it the first time, there's nothing wrong with that. I don't think anybody ever does it the first time. But you just have to practice it and start to think about what you're doing. But the nice thing about practicing is, even, like after tonight, we won't see each other until 2 weeks, right? So whatever you practice between now and the next time we meet, is if you're not getting something, guess what? That's going to be a good place to start next time we meet. You'll have a question. Hey, wait a minute, I don't get this. What's going on here? And that's the learning aspect. The more you prepare and the more you practice, that's how you're going to get it. That's the beauty of learning, is we've all failed at something. And then once you failed at it and you figure out what you're doing wrong, then you got it, and then you won't miss it again. So that's why my goal along the way, before we even get to an exam, is hopefully if you mess up enough, you learn from your mistakes, and then when you get to the exams, you don't make those same mistakes. That's the key. Okay. All right, where am I at? Is that number 4? All right.
3.
So 3, we
Right.
said, okay, revenue and cash, right? So increase revenue, increase cash. 4, purchased additional equipment for $9,200 in cash. So we got equipment, right? And cash. You got to fill this in. Do you think cash is going to increase or decrease?
Or decrease?
Decrease.
Decrease.
Decrease. And what about equipment? Increase or decrease?
Increase.
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 There you go. So if it's increase, put a plus. If it's a decrease, put a minus. And I'll do the same. So on cash, I'll put a minus 9,200. Now on mine, it shows up as a bracket. If you see brackets in front of it, it's just the formatting, that means negative. And then equipment, I'll put 9,200. So if you see brackets around it, that means minus.
Okay.
All right, number 5. We've got perform, and keep in mind, we've seen perform services already, right? Number 3 was perform services. Number 5 is perform services. This says for 10,100 on credit. So we know revenue. What's going to be the offset? We know one of them is going to be revenue, and the other one's
Receivable.
accounts receivable. So notice the difference. This one's going to be, it's not cash, it's accounts receivable. So you'll put that 10,100 under accounts receivable and under revenue. All right. And so the way you should record this is you'll have, this is again 10,001 accounts receivable, and then revenue 10,001. So plus revenue plus accounts receivable. And I'll stop right there on transaction number 5. That's how the accounting records are recorded. But again, if you're a business, you want that accounts receivable to become cash at some point in time. You don't want it to sit up there, but you got to show it right now in accounts receivable. And the expectation is that you will receive that eventually. And I think in number 7, we'll get some of that cash coming in. You'll see that in a moment. All right. Okay. Number 6. Paid salaries, 8,900 to employees. So anytime you see paid, you know cash, right? I mean, paid is everything's financial, everything's cash. So cash is coming out, right? Where would the offset go? Salaries would be under what category? Anybody?
Expensive.
Expenses.
So put minus for your expenses and minus for cash. So the way I will write this out, number 6,
Right.
minus 8,900. And then I'm going to go ahead and put minus 8,900 under expenses. Okay. All right. Number 7.
So both of them are minus.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Number 6, wait, what was that? Okay, pay
Minus-
salaries, okay.
But minus cash, minus expense. Number
Okay.
7, received $6,400 cash from charge account customers. So received cash, we got cash increasing, right?
Yes.
What's going to be the offset?
Accounts receivable.
Accounts receivable,
And will accounts receivable increase or decrease?
Decrease.
decrease.
You got it. So let's go back. Let me increase my screen. Hold on. So we would say, this is number 7, you say 6,400 cash, and then accounts receivable. There's your minus. Okay.
I still don't understand, like, why is you subtracting accounts receivable?
Okay.
'Cause you're
So
getting paid
we
for it.
are, so think of it like this. Right now, before number 7, we've got $10,100 that a customer owes us money. Okay. They call these credit charge account customers. In number 7, we're collecting some of that money.
Yep.
So we're taking some of that money and putting it into cash. Well, when we do that, that account's going to be reduced. So we're reducing it. We're collecting $6,400 from that 10,001, and we're putting it into cash.
Okay.
So they're paying the bill that they owe you.
Correct.
It would be considered their accounts payable and it's payable to us. And
Correct.
we essentially turn that into cash that's available for us to use.
Correct.
Right, that's what I'm trying to figure out,
Gotcha.
like, who is who?
The accounts receivable is your pot that you put your credit in.
That is the customers, that's where we've earned revenue. We've earned our money. We just haven't been paid yet.
Yeah, accounts receivable is who owes you money.
That's who owes us money. You got it.
Okay.
But I think, Jay, you said it right. There's always a flip. So to the customer, to them, it's accounts payable. To us, it's accounts receivable. They're paying their debt, but to us, we're paying what's owed to us. Accounts receivable is an asset. Okay. And think of it as kind of like cash equivalent. It's just not quite cash yet.
It's like when
And-
you give your friend $20 and they owe you $20 and then they gave you the $20 back.
Correct. Yeah. You see,
Okay.
if I look at number 5 and you've got this accounts receivable at 10,001, which was generated by performing a service, right? Remember, the goal is the only reason we have this accounts receivable is just because of convenience. It's not convenient to write a check every time you do business. It's just not. Your business would not grow. You know, not everybody wants to pay cash and first of all, you don't want to have cash handling at your business either. Everything here is done digitally, by the way, but there are still some businesses that say cash only and you got to pay cash, but this is just all theoretical stuff right now I'm talking. But the idea here is typically you give your customers some time to pay you, they will pay. They don't always have the money right away. They got to get their cash coming into their business, right? There's always a trickle effect. But the idea is we want this to be over here. We want this accounts receivable to become cash. It will become cash when we collect from it. So in number 7, when it says receive cash from your charged customers, we're simply just taking some of that receivable and just turning it over to cash. So we're showing we're gonna have to show a decrease to AR and an increase to cash. Now, again, we're just doing all this under the premise of this is how it fits into the equation. But eventually what you're going to see is every company, every business has to have some sort of financial record, especially when it comes to cash, right? Because anytime people have access to writing checks and have access to the bank accounts, there's always opportunities for fraud and embezzlement, and that happens a lot. So eventually we'll get into those records and we'll show you how there's a journal entry or there's some sort of source document that has to be verified, but that's coming later. This right now, we're just saying, hey, look, this is how it fit in under the accounting records. They had to have to show a decrease to receivable and an increase to cash. All right. All right, last one on this problem is, notice it says paid $26,000 to a creditor on account. So if you paid $26,000, what's happening to cash?
Decrease.
Decreased. And we're paying our bill, we're paying our debt, right?
Yeah.
You're paying your accounts payable. So would accounts payable be increasing or decreasing?
Increasing.
Increasing.
Not increasing. You're paying it means you're reducing it. Anytime,
Oh yeah, decreasing.
remember, anytime you're paying your bill, you're paying your debt, you're going to decrease it. So we're going to show, this is how we'll show it. We'll show a decrease in cash of $26,000 and a decrease to accounts payable of $26,000. So right now, that's all the transactions. That's literally 1 through 8. So notice we had an investment, we bought some equipment, we had some cash revenue, we bought some more equipment, we had a credit revenue example, we paid some expenses, we collected, and then we paid a debt. All right. So if this was our equation and this was our analysis of our business, what we can now do is, what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go ahead and add up all these columns. I want to show you that right now, if we stopped right here, we'd say, okay, does our equation balance? So I would go ahead and I would add up, switch this over so I can get to my screen. All right, I would go ahead and add up all my cash, and I would get 88,500. That's just taking every transaction from number 1 through 8. If it's a positive, you add it. If it's a minus, you subtract it. You'll get a positive cash of 88,500. If I go to accounts receivable, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to take all my accounts receivable, add those, I get 3,700. That's taking the 10,001 minus the 6,400. And then for equipment, I'm going to add my 2 equipments. I get 53,002.
Okay.
Think about the math I'm doing here. I'm adding and subtracting. And then if I want to know what my total assets are, I add these 3 assets and I get 145,400. That's my total assets. I go to my liabilities. I'm going to do the same thing there. I'm going to add up my liabilities. I got 44 minus 26. I get 18,000. I only have one item here. That's 120. I'm going to add up my revenues. And then I'm going to add up my expenses. And then what I'll do here now is I'm going to take accounts payable, add my capital, add my revenue, and subtract out my expenses. If I do that, I get 145.4. Notice it's the same number. So we're balanced. Okay. So it's not really about math difficulty. It's really about knowing the rules of accounting. It's knowing what you're adding, what you're comparing. It's all about relationships. That's the thing about accounting. It's not, the math is not what's going to trick anybody or get anybody in this class. It's not knowing the classifications. It's not knowing the increase or the decrease, which ones you add or subtract. It's not the math. Okay. Okay, now that would be it for this problem normally. We'd say, okay, we've analyzed these, increase, decrease. This is how it fits. Our equation is balanced. Assets equals liabilities plus equity. But now let's say we wanted to put together our financial statements. So I put this over here, and you can just jot this down on a piece of paper. I just went in and say, real rough, okay, here's my income statement. I just said income statement title for the month ended June, and your income statement summarizes revenues and expenses. So if I went to my accounting equation, I got one revenue column. My revenues for the month of June was 16,300. So you'd plug that in right there. That's all you do. My expenses was 8,900. I'd plug that in right there. Now keep in mind, this is a very simple problem. I'm trying to show you the basic concept. If you understand this, you can do one that's a lot more complex. But you know, typically a business is going to have more than just one expense. You know that, right?
Mhm.
I mean, if you think about a company the size of Boeing, you can imagine how many different types of expenses a multi-billion-dollar company would have. But just keep that in the context. It doesn't matter. As long as you understand this, you get the basic framework. So what the income statement would then do is you take your revenues, subtract out your expenses, and I would record a net income, right, this, of $700. So that would be how an accounting system would record the income statement. And you simply say, okay, they're making money, they're making a net income of $7,400. Now,
Are you writing something? Because I don't see it.
do you guys see that on my screen?
No.
No, there's nothing on the screen.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on just a
Yeah,
second.
your screen's like frozen or something.
Is it? Let me go back.
There
Yeah.
it goes.
So we missed. Okay.
There it is.
You guys see it now?
Yes.
Yeah.
You still see it? Okay. I
Yeah.
apologize about that. All I did, let me go to the site here. Hold on just a second. All right. So all I did, let me go back over, is I said, and you guys can see that now, right? This,
Yeah.
I got it highlighted. Okay.
Yeah.
So I said revenues, we've got one revenue item, which is right there.
Mhm.
And then your expenses is right there. There's two items. I just copy that over from the accounting equation. That's the summary. Income statement says net income is 7,400. I just took revenues, subtracted out the expenses. I got 7,400. That's all I did. Now, if we were to say that's financial statement number 1, your equity statement would be financial statement number 2. Now, I'm going to put here beginning capital 0 to say that this is what we're starting the period with, is 0. I'm going to then copy over the equity statement, adds in net income. So I'm going to put that right there. So 7,400, and toggle back on. And then the investment.
And you're gonna give this Excel sheet to us, right? You're gonna make it available
Yes.
for us. Okay.
Yes, put the, yeah. Yep. So your investment was right here, 120,000. That was the investment. So I'm going to go ahead and put that one investment of 120. It's a different category right there. And let me just format this real quick. Hold on. You guys can still see that, right?
Yes.
Right.
Okay. All right. And I don't believe there was any withdrawals. So at this point, I can just net these. And right now, the equity statement would say ending capital balance 127,400. So that would be your second financial statement. Now, the third financial statement would then be your balance sheet. Notice I just put balance sheet June 30th. So notice I've got assets. There's 3 assets.
Could you zoom
Yeah,
out a little
yeah.
bit so that I can
Yeah.
write how you're working all that out?
Can you see that a
Oh,
little bit better?
that is zoomed in. I meant zoomed
Zoomed
out.
in. Yeah.
That's
So wait, where did you get
You want to see that? Is that better?
120,000?
Where did I get
I don't
120?
see. Yeah, I
Capital
don't see
investment.
that.
Under the accounting equation, that's your
Okay.
investment.
Okay, I see it.
Okay. So that's where I put that there. The net income, I just copied that over from the income statement.
So net income and then add your investments.
Mhm.
Okay, from the capital. Okay.
Now,
And add those two together. Okay.
correct. Now, if they had any withdrawals, which they didn't, you would subtract. But since they don't, I just left it blank.
Right. Okay.
So right now, our ending capital is 127,400. So this is financial statement number 2. So when we go to financial statement number 3 on your balance sheet, and I'll go back up and show you, we got to plug in our 3 assets, which we actually already know the numbers. We will plug in our accounts payable, and then we'll plug in this equity, this capital number, and then we'll see if we balance. So we've got 3 assets, right? We've got cash, accounts receivable, and equipment. So we had 88.5, 3,700, and 53.2. All those, I'm just gonna pull over here to the balance sheet, okay?
Okay.
So I'll go down. So we've got cash is 88,500. Accounts receivable is 3,700. And equipment is 53.2, if I got that in the right column. And then I'm just gonna go ahead and add these up. We already know the total. It's 145.4.
Okay.
Just a second, I'm changing my format, just a quick second. Sometimes when I got multiple screens open, it might show up kind of weird, but let me just change this real quick so it's easy for you to look at. All right. So accounts payable is 18,000. I'm just pulling out right from my accounting equation. I'll plug that in here. And let me increase that. That's the wrong size. I think I want that to be 16. Hold on. All right. And then this capital number, we already know because we get that from our equity statement. That 127.4 is going to be plugged in right there for our balance. Again, the formatting's off. Let me just increase it. Hold on just a second. There we go. Now, if I were to add these together, 18 and 127.4, notice I get the 145.4. And let me just kind of scroll this down. Notice that you are balanced.
Right. Okay.
So 145.4 is your total assets. Total liabilities and capital is the same number. Okay. So all I'm trying to show you here, and you go back up, is I just walked you through 8 transactions. 8 pretty basic but very common types of transactions you'll see in any accounting system. I used the accounting equation. We then we got a total for each of these. Tried to show you that the equation still balances. And then I tried to show you once you get all this stuff, now remember accounting, if you can't communicate it, then it's really useless. It's just data. What accounting has to do is it has to summarize it. So we're going to summarize all this into these financial statements. You start with the income statement. That's number 1. You summarize revenues and expenses. These 2 categories right here from your equity. We get net income or net loss. You can remember, you can always get net loss if you have more expenses than revenue, but this case is net income. We then go to the equity statement. We add that net income. If there were any investments, just look at the capital account. That's the investment account, which there were. And then there were no withdrawals, so I left that blank. We netted these. We got a new capital balance. This is the balance that goes on the balance sheet. So I go down to the balance sheet. And hopefully you can see this. So there's that balance. That's that balance right there from capital goes right there. We just plug the rest of the numbers, get pulled from your accounting equation, and then of course your balance. And any computer accounting software would do this behind the scenes. If you were an accounting manager or a cost manager, you wouldn't see all this because the computer is doing this. Once something's entered, the computers can do this very, very, very quickly. But we're showing you in this class, which is the nice thing about this class, is we're showing you this. This is the background. This is how accounting systems work. And you got to know this, okay? So regardless, as if anybody actually does this stuff anymore, the computers do most of the stuff, you still have to understand it. Because number one, it's going to help you understand the financial statements. It's going to help you understand how to read them. But the one big thing in accounting that you do have a lot of is errors and mistakes. And if you think about, now see, a company that I worked at wasn't quite as big as Boeing, but it's pretty big. It's $1 billion company back in the 90s. It's kind of like Monsanto. I guess Monsanto got bought out by Bayer, didn't they? So it's not Monsanto, and I think it's Bayer now, isn't it? The company one of the companies I worked at was very similar to like the size of the Bayer. Very, very big company. Not as big as Boeing, but the one thing I found out when I worked in the accounting department, operations, is that there were always a lot of mistakes. And we had, there was a lot of automation, even back in the 90s, there were still a lot of automations when I was at this company. But quite often, you always had to make corrections. And sometimes you had to understand if something didn't look right. And if I were to look at an income statement, there's a lot of judgment in accounting. That's something that the computers still can't take, is they can't do everything for us. They can't make judgments as well as the human can. Sometimes you would see something that just doesn't look right. You might have to go back in and say, hey, look, something in here doesn't look right. And you could have used a wrong account, a wrong amount, a source document could have been incorrect or something, but you still have to have that knowledge, because quite often, sometimes you have to go in and fix things. And that's not something that the computer will ever be able to do for you. So that's why the appreciation, you still have to know this stuff, okay? All right, going back on this problem, are there any questions on exercise 2.5 and anything that I just showed you? I took this problem farther than what they did, okay? I not only recorded these, but I actually did the 3 basic financial statements, just to show you how you would prepare those after you did the equation.
So can you do like
Okay, yeah.
I'm sorry, I was just gonna say, can you do like a formula like purchase equipment equals or means, or perform services means cash, or can you do like a formula?
I would say, like, when you're studying and taking notes, I think a good thing that you might want to try is maybe making some flashcards. That's what I would do. And if it helps you to understand that, like, you might make a flashcard that you could say, okay, anytime you see perform service, like in number 3, 5, perform services means revenue. That could be note taking. And then you might also write in your notes, there's 2 types. You could either have cash revenue or accounts receivable revenue. And that might help you get through when you come to future problems and you get stuck. You go back to that flashcard and you say, okay, yeah, that makes sense now. You have 2 types. It's either going to say cash, or it'll say credit, or it'll say on account. But that's it. And then once you get that down, that's how you do. That's how I studied. I always would rewrite notes. I'd make flashcards. And anytime I came across something that just I was always confused or that I continually missed, I would make a note card. When I was studying for the CPA exam, whenever I'd study a problem, I'd miss a problem on the practice. That was always a reason to make a new note card. And obviously, if I was missing something when I was studying, I clearly didn't understand it. And if I repeatedly missed it, then I definitely have to go back and refocus on it. And that's why back in the day, they always told me to focus on your weaknesses. Don't worry about your, if you've got something down, you got it. Don't worry about it. But they always would say, worry about your weaknesses. So when I would study and practice, every time I'd miss something, to me, that was a reason to make a note card. And I'd say, okay, what am I not seeing here? Why am I missing this? And then once I started to practice and study that, then I kind of figured out, okay, I figured out what I didn't know. The worst thing that you want to do is when you're taking a quiz or an exam or practice, the worst thing that you want to do is if you get something right and you say, oh, looks like I got the right number, but if you don't understand it, then you might want to stop right there and say, what did I get? Because you would it'd actually be better for you to miss something and then figure out why you're missing it than to actually get something right just because you got lucky.
Right.
And sometimes, and I was a victim, sometimes when I was studying, I get something right, and there's so much volume in accounting that you just move on. If you got it right, sometimes maybe you got it right for the wrong reason, and that's even worse. And that happened to me a lot, by the way. I remember a few times when this is back in the day when I was reviewing my notes for the CPA exam, I thought I knew something, and then I came across another problem, and then I missed it. I'm thinking, wait a minute, why did I miss it? And then I figured out that I was doing it wrong the whole time. I was like, wow. So note cards, note taking would be my suggestion if you're trying to figure out some ways to help remember, what's a revenue transaction, what accounts are affected. I think that's a good way to study. And to me, that's just an individual thing. Everybody has a different way of how they're going to remember this. But I think this problem right here, this is again 2.5. This problem covers a lot of the different things you're going to come up with. You're going to have issues where you buy stuff on account, like where it says purchase equipment on account. You're going to have transactions where you pay money on account. You're going to have transactions where you earn money on credit, That was number 5. And then you're going to have transactions where you receive cash from your credit customers. Even though there's only 8 transactions in this problem, it hits 2 or 3 of the big ones that a lot of students, get confused with. So that's a good problem to go back and study. But I think Jay or somebody else mentioned, yeah, I'll put this template out there in Blackboard tonight as well. So that way you can have access to it. You can print it off if you want to use it like as a note-taking purpose or even as a work paper later on as well. Okay.
I have a question about equipment.
Yes.
Okay, so anytime you buy equipment, whether it be vehicles for your business or a fryer for a restaurant, that equipment immediately depreciates in value. Its resale value is significantly less the second that you purchase it.
Not necessarily. I mean, okay, off the record, yes, you're right. But when I say not necessarily, and again, we haven't gotten to depreciation yet, but if you're like, let's say you own a company, you own a restaurant, or you're starting up your own restaurant, you're going to have a fryer, you'll have an oven, you'll have a bunch of very costly equipment, refrigerators, freezers, very expensive items. Some of these items might cost several thousands of dollars. Typically, in an accounting system, you would have specific account names or account. In fact, one more thing you brought up something that's very important. So far, you'll notice, and let me go back to my screen. Hold on. Let me go back to my screen. So you'll notice that, at least for right now, how I'm saying cash, accounts receivable, equipment, you guys realize that because all this stuff is in a computer system, cash is going to have some sort of code, some sort of number is going to represent cash, usually starting with like number 1 or something like that. But if you have different types of equipments like fryers and stuff, in accounting, typically we get to the concept of depreciation. Accounting looks at depreciation different than the public might. So accounting looks at depreciation as what they call a cost allocation. And it's totally different than the concept of market value. And I don't know if that's where you were going with this, but we don't.
I was just wondering if it was going to become a relevant calculation later.
Yeah, it will.
Okay.
It definitely will. In fact, chapter 5 is when we're going to do depreciation. What we'll do is in the first 3 chapters, we're going to practice this accounting equation, and then we're going to mix in some other rules of increase, decrease, debits and credits and so forth. Chapter 4 is we're going to talk about how this stuff gets recorded in a journal. There's a lot of repeat stuff. It's in chapter 5 when we get to the adjustment chapter. That's where we're going to deal with the concept of depreciation, which is very important. And everything in this problem where we bought equipment and so forth, that's going to figure into how we depreciate the asset. And you said something, and I'll just kind of say it right now. Typically, you don't depreciate something until you start using it. So if you bought equipment, if you bought equipment on June 1st, but didn't start using it until August 1st, August 1st is when you would start the depreciation, not on June 1st. But in this textbook, typically when we work a problem, they'll give you the dates and when you start that depreciation. And there's actually a couple different calculations. We're going to do what is called the straight line method, but again, that's coming up. I don't want to throw all this stuff at you tonight, but yeah, that's very relevant. And you'll find out later on, if you guys take even more accounting, that there's what they call, businesses actually have to have 2 sets of records, one for the GAAP, the accounting rules, and one for the IRS, because guess what? The tax rules are different than GAAP.
Oh, Lord.
Isn't that just enough? Now, I mean, you don't have to worry about it too much in this class, but I'm telling you, in the real world, typically what would happen is you would probably need to have an understanding of not just GAAP, but also an understanding of the tax code, because the tax code has also different rules in terms of how businesses can depreciate their assets. So
Of course it does.
So usually what happens is you'll have 2 sets of records. You'll have the GAAP records, and then you'll have the tax records. And sometimes there's some differences. It's crazy. So that's why, for right now, this is just, an entry-level accounting class, but it's interesting. You guys are already asking some of this stuff. It's just the thing about accounting is it's just knowledge. There's a lot of volume of information that you got to know. But we typically start off like in a class like this, and then the next class, if you take as financial accounting, is you learn the rules of the financial statements, you learn the GAAP, and then eventually you start to study how does the IRS look at it. And guess what? The IRS has different objectives than the GAAP does. And guess what? That's all under the government, and it's all fair and square. So, you know, you can not like it, but it is what it is. And that's why a lot of big companies, they typically have, they want to hire accountants from the tax field because they want people who know the tax side of it to also come in and work on the GAAP side. Okay, so usually, like when I tell students if they're starting out their career, you know, sometimes it might not be a bad idea to go into the public accounting field because you might learn stuff about tax. And then later on, after a few years in the public, you might go to private sector and you'll bring all that tax knowledge, and then you'll be able to help the companies out because you'll be not only the GAAP expert, but you'll also be the tax expert as well. And I saw that so many times. So that's how you kind of build your resume. And, you know, some of these people make a lot of money. I mean, it's you know, you gotta sometimes do some of the put in a few years in that public field, get some experience, and then go back out, and then you'll be in that high six-figure salary job.
Okay.
All right. All right. So that was what, 2.5. Was there anything else? Any questions on what I just showed you in 2.5? Anybody?
Not really. I'm good. Oh, wait, well.
I just walked you through 8 transactions. I tried to show you each where they increased or decreased in each one of these. And then I took it one step farther by just finishing it and then also doing the financial statements, because I think ultimately that's really what you want to see. You don't just want to stop on number 8 and then say, okay, now what do you do? I just wanted to show you, because this was an easy one, just to show you, okay, this is how you would then prepare your financial statements.
I do have a question.
Yes.
So for figuring out the transactions and where they essentially go on the equation, is it all just terminology that you kind of have to pick out where it goes?
Yep.
Yeah, fun stuff.
No, well, I mean, you know, that's why they said this is a you guys are learning. You know, if let's say I know some of you aren't business majors, and that's fine, but you know, this is technically a business class, accounting. And anytime you're taking like an accounting business type of discipline, it is a specific, unique type of language. It really is. Whenever I send out emails or announcements or stuff, you'll find that I like to be very concise. I like to use bullet points. I don't like to write a lot of fluff. I'm not going to write a paragraph telling you this is my background, blah, blah, blah. You know, business people get right to the point, which drives me nuts, because lots of times I'll get a lot of emails from my kids' school where they're trying to, like, for example, I got like an 8-year-old and a 3.5-year-old, and, you know, the school system's really crazy right now with, it's this hybrid learning, whether you're in school.
Yes.
And I've got one kid who goes in 2 days a week, and then they're home 3 days, right? And in the emails leading up to, because they were going to, the initial plan was, you know, to have all the kids go back, you know, 5 days a week. And of course that didn't happen. But you should have seen the emails that the administrators were sending out. They were so complicated and convoluted. I couldn't figure out. I'm like, okay, can they get to the point? I mean, they came up with, well, we really feel for you. And, you know, that's fine.
Oh, there was so much fluff. It was a nightmare.
I don't like fluff. And
It still is.
I got to the point where I asked my wife, I was like, so what are we supposed to do now? And even today, like, for example, my kid got out at 3 o'clock. Well, his teacher said, we had like a one-on-one conference with the teacher. They said 3:25. And I said, well, I'm going to go a little bit early. And then I talked to the lady I was picking up. I said, so what's the correct time? She said, well, it's supposed to be 3 o'clock. So I'm getting all these mixed messages. I'm thinking, you know, all that can be very simply fixed. Just send me a bullet point list. I don't need to know your feelings. Not that I'm trying to be a cold person. I don't really care. Just tell me what the rule is. I'll follow it. That's all I want to know. But my point is, you know, that's my background. I try not to do a lot of fluff. I try to be very direct and to the point. And the reason is because I don't want you to be confused. Because if I get confused and I'm not knowing what to do, I don't want that to happen to you guys. So like in this class, I try to be very direct. And I give you the background information, but when I send out my messages, I try to be very direct. I don't give you, here's the reason. I mean, sometimes if you want to know more, you can talk to me about it in a conversation. But yeah, I get so many email messages that are like, they're like 3 pages long. And I was like, really? Like they can't, I was taught in school, if you can't send out a memo page announcement in one page, then then you need to be a little more concise. You got to learn to get that into one page, be direct to the point so people don't get confused. And if you're running a business, if you are in business, you don't want your client to be confused. You want to be very clear. And it's all
That's
about
the KISS message. That's the
What?
KISS message.
Keep it simple, yeah.
Just bullet point it.
And
Here's what you got to know.
Yeah, and I think, in my opinion, I mean, I'm not trying to pick on administrators at all. I'm not trying to do that, but I've worked with enough of them that sometimes I feel like they get so bored and lonely that's why they tend to write these paragraphs of information, because it makes them feel like they're doing, I mean, just give me
Doing something.
I don't care. I mean, you know, I really don't. Sometimes they just, I mean, you believe it or not, I have to go to meetings that most of the information I get in some of these meetings could have been emailed in like one sentence. But they just want everybody to sit down and talk so you can see each other and be social. And that's fine. You know what? They're wasting my time because I got other stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm not saying you could have some important meetings, but I always say if it's something that can be communicated very simply in an email, then there's no reason to meet. And, you know, sometimes, yeah, you want to meet and see your colleagues, but you know what? It's like, if you're busy, and you guys are too, just get right to the point. All right,
Also, not during a pandemic. I don't want to meet with anyone during a freaking pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a week. Yeah, so I mean, I went through so many meetings. I get to the point now where, you know, back in my day, I used to have to wear a tie to work every day. I got so sick of wearing a tie because, you know, we're the accounting department. We're not sales and marketing. Why do we have to wear a tie? And then, you know, meetings are such a waste of time, you know, in my opinion. Unless it's good to kind of meet up if there's issues, but if there are no issues, I'm good with just sending me an email. I'm fine. But I know not everybody needs that. Sometimes people need that they need to go actually touch each other and see each other. That's fine. But for me, I just, you know, if it's nothing too important, send me an email. If I need some help, I'll let you know. That's kind of how I do it. But in business, be concise, bullet points. And that's why I say, when you guys email me, like if you have questions on homework, you know, always tell me, for example, which class you're in. I've got like 5 online classes. So let me know which class, just in case. That way I try to get to your answers quickly. But I've already had a few students email me and I have to go and look them up because I'm not quite sure what class they're in, whether it's financial accounting or applied or statistics. So sometimes it actually helps me get to your solution quicker if I can help. You know, always tell me what class you're in. That way that I'll get to your answer quicker. All right, guys. So
got a question when you finish.
Yes, I'm done. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, we come back on the 14th for the next class.
Let me check. Let me look at my calendar. All right, so today, correct, yeah. So today is the 31st. So we don't meet on the 7th, but we will meet again on the 14th. You got it.
Okay.
So we will be doing chapter 3 starting on the 14th.
No. We're tonight. So what I intend to do, and I always kind of built in a couple days on this to see where we're at. And I know I think I say finish chapter. You know, what I'll do on the 14th is we will finish up chapter 2 on the 14th, and then possibly start a little bit of chapter 3 that night. That's my intent. So
when is chapter 2 actually due?
I think right now, I'll go back and look at the due date. I think it says the 13th, but I'll probably push that back a week. Not probably, I will. Okay. So right now, the chapter 2 stuff, even because this is what when I initially planned out the semester, I put all these dates out there. I believe that the chapter 2 assignments, I'm going to move those back to.
Yeah, they're due on the 13th,
yeah.
And you have the chapter 3 stuff due on the 20th.
Yeah, that's, again, that's just my initial date. So, if, you know, for the live virtual lecture like this, it's fluid. So what I do it is, when we come back on the 14th, all the dates will be moved. I always update it as we go. And then I'm going to try to see what type of issues or problems anybody's having with this chapter. So let me go back to the e-text. Got a few more minutes here. So I just walked you through 2.5. And in our next meeting, I intend to look at the problems. Now, you guys have all the answers to these. This is problem 2.1a. So my intent is when we come back on that Monday, I'm going to start with 2.1a. I'm going to walk you through this problem. I'm going to put together the financial statements as well, okay? And if you guys can handle that one, as you're, of course, in between, you're going to be reviewing and practicing. You can start to practice your Connect homework, start to practice. You can then tell me also on the 14th where your problems are, all right? Because right now we're starting this out and you may be confused. Once you start to study and do your problems, we come back on the 14th, I'm going to do another problem with you. I'll record it. You also have all my other recordings. You have my homework illustrations already. You can review a bunch of stuff and you can start to submit everything. I will try to find out on that Monday when we come back where the problem are, if you have questions. And I'm assuming there will be. And that'll kind of lead me to where we do that night. I intend to try to finish this chapter that night. And if, even after the break, if we're good, then there's a chance that I'll probably even start chapter 3. Now you might be panicking and thinking, wow, that's a lot. Well, guys, what happens is chapter 2 and chapter 3 are very similar. It's the same transactions. All we do is in chapter 3, we still do the accounting equation, but we're going to add the concept of a debit and credit rule. It's the same stuff though. So it's important. I don't mind spending another day on this one, another week on this, because once you get this chapter down, really all the other chapters are based on this chapter, just so you know. So it's a pretty important chapter. So you should have enough even right now to be able to do a lot of practice in the next couple weeks. You can start to submit your homeworks. I will promise, I'm making a note right now. Let me write this down. And this will happen tonight. I will update the due dates in Connect for chapter 2, so you're not worrying about having that done by the 13th. Okay. And hopefully that if there are any issues, you will let me know on that Monday. So practice, you need to be practicing these problems. I would say go to Connect, start to practice the Connect homework. But I'm specifically the one I didn't quite get to tonight because it'll probably take me at least probably 20 minutes to go through with you. I'm not going to do, it's 9:32 right now. I'm not going to do that right now. But this problem right here is very similar to the ones I just showed you, except there's 11 transactions. So a problem like this, you want to, this one just says record it in an equation form. Set up your accounting equation and see if you can figure out 1 through 11. You've got the solutions to this in the ebook as well. You might want to try that. And then also 2.2a is another good one. It's a really good problem. Okay, so 2.1a and 2.2a. And the way I'll try to lead this is this. You practice these. You do go back and watch my videos. I think I even have, a textbook illustration in there for you as well. Go to the chapter 2 learning module on Blackboard. There's a lot of stuff I have for you. Practice it, a couple weeks to practice this stuff, take some notes. And then when we come back then on the 14th, you'll let me know what your questions are. And sometimes your questions can be answered just by looking at a problem. We'll go back and do a problem, and then that might help solve your problem. But hopefully you might have some specific questions for me, and then you can just let me know, and then that'll help me help you figure out what I need to do for you. Does everybody understand that, what you need to be doing?
Yeah.
Yes.
Sir.
Yeah.
I do have a quick question.
Jay? Yeah, question.
So in chapter 1, there were like dates specific, like for the socks and everything. Do we need to know those?
Nope, I never test. Yeah. In my opinion, that's just information. I mean, it's good to know in terms of memorizing what date did this come out. I'd never test you on that.
Yeah, because it's the SOX Act and then the Security Act of 1933 and the Securities Exchange Act of 1934.
Yeah, we'll vaguely touch any of that stuff. Most of that stuff will be for financial accounting. Those acts just tell you that's more for the public firms. It lays out all the different rules about who can sell stock to the public, and we don't do a lot of that in this class. So you don't have to worry about those dates.
They won't even will they be referenced? I'm sure the SOX Act will, but
SOX, not the dates. I never test you on dates. I test you more on concepts, on analyzing.
So more of
Okay.
understanding the actual content that we're supposed to know.
That's how I test.
Good.
Now, back in my day, I'll just tell you, I got asked stuff like that all the time in school, and I hated it. I'm like, what? I was like, I forgot to write the date down, so I missed a couple points. I'm like, really? Is it that important? No, to me, it's not. That's the unimportant stuff. But that's, so what? The person running the class, what can you do, right? But they don't even ask that kind of stuff on the CPA exam anymore. So it's all more analyzing. You have to understand concepts. That thing about knowing the dates, that was back when they used to make you memorize everything.
That's
Okay.
called history.
Yep. And not to say that that's not important. I'm just saying, to me, what's going to make a good accountant or somebody who understands this stuff is if you understand the concepts, that's going to be much more beneficial than just understanding what date did the SEC write the Securities and Exchange Act of 1932.
Right. Like it's more important to know how to do it than to know when it was implemented.
Exactly. That's how I approach this whole class.
That template.
Sounds smart.
Okay, so on SmartBook video, okay, I know you said we get 100% for trying. So basically, I got a different score. Like I got like a 75. So are you using a 75, or are we actually getting 100% for the effort?
Well, remember on your homeworks, whatever score pops up, everything is, I think, out of 10.
No,
so,
the SmartBook video.
No, 0. Yeah, that's just, you don't get any points for that. That's just effort. That's optional. You don't have to even look at those.
Oh,
That's
speaking of that, quizzes, it says that you have 2 attempts to do the quizzes.
Correct.
However, it does not tell, I have not been able to find out how you can see what you did wrong.
You can't until after the due date.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
That's that's kind of like a little bit of a thing. You get 2 attempts, so if you get a 9 out of 10 on the first one, yeah, you don't know what you did wrong. So that might be kind of, but I'm still giving you another chance. So there could have been something, you don't just want to put the same answers in, there's something that you missed wrong. So even though I do give you 2 attempts, you can never see the exact, your exact scores until after the due date. But if you think about it, whenever I was taking quizzes and stuff, I would always have a question mark on certain questions. And of course, if I missed one, my guess would be that's the one that I missed. So you usually have a gut feeling when you work a problem if you got it or not, usually. But yeah, but you should get 2 attempts. So I'd say, look, if you don't get a 10 out of 10 on that first one, then I would at least try it again. It's not going to hurt you. I count your best attempt. Now, on the homeworks, you got the answers to all those. You still have to submit them, though, by the due date.
I have another question about the quizzes.
Yeah.
So will it take the second quiz score or the highest graded quiz?
Highest. Takes the highest.
Okay, perfect.
Now,
thank you.
I'm glad you brought that up, Tori. So I have the Blackboard gradebook paired up with Connect. And what's supposed to happen is when you submit your assignment, either the homework or the quiz in Connect, the Blackboard gradebook should update as well. And I found that didn't happen for everybody, and there must be some sort of glitch. So don't panic if you go into Blackboard and you don't see your Connect grade just yet. I will always review it and update it. If I have to manually enter it, I'll do it. But I was having an issue today. I was refreshing the Blackboard gradebook, and I noticed for some of my students, not all the students had their problems transfer from the gradebook from Connect into Blackboard. And I'm going to try to figure out exactly. I do not know why that's happening. So, but rest assured, you'll get those points. So I always review everything. So I will not miss that. So
Okay, perfect. I was wondering about that.
Yeah. So if you submitted those first week assignments and you don't see those in Blackboard, don't worry about it. Just so you know, what I do is I have 2 grade books. I do a separate grade book that I always reconcile with Connect and Blackboard that you don't see. So that way, that makes sure I catch everything. All right. Okay. All right, guys. So I'm at 9:40. I'm about wrapping this up. Are there any other issues or questions before we leave? Again, I don't see it until the 14th. Do you guys know what to do, what you should be doing between now and the 14th?
Studying.
Do what?
Chapter 2.
Chapter 2.
I was just saying studying.
Here's what I'll do. And I do
Practice.
this. So this is being recorded, and I will also send out another announcement to your student emails, just a kind of a recap of tonight, what you should be practicing before our next meeting, and also what to expect at our next meeting, just to kind of give you a heads up, okay? I always will do that. Just like if we were meeting in face-to-face, I would give
Okay.
you the, basically, here's what you need to be doing, and putting it in the announcement. And then I know some of you are busy, you got multiple classes, you got kids, you got different schedules, but you can always go back to Blackboard and review the weekly announcements just to make sure you're doing what you need to be doing, okay? The key to this class is just to not get behind and just to do the weekly work, okay? As long as you're doing that, you should all make it. There should be no problems. And then sometimes, you know, if you get behind, you let me know. But that's why you have all these resources. They're always there. If you have a technology breakdown where you're in the middle of a quiz and you get kicked out and something happens, just let me know. I can always reset it for you as well. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Anything else? I'm going to wrap this up here in a minute if there's nothing else. Are we good? It's getting late. It's been a long day.
Nothing for me.
Are we good? All right. So
Yep.
none of you, so a couple things. So if you were one of those that had a Connect issue where you couldn't register with Connect with that free trial thing, send me another email, and then I'll work with you on the extension on the due dates if you couldn't get in there and get that done. Usually the first week, there's always an issue or a mess, and so I'm pretty flexible on the dates. And the goal is to make sure you don't get behind. I had a couple students that got added to the class a little bit late, so they might have missed last week's session. But just remember, this session, in a moment when I stop recording it, I'll post it to YouTube, and it'll be linked up into Blackboard. So if you want to go back and review tonight's discussion, you can do that as well. So, okay, well, guys, I'm going to wrap this up if there's nothing else.
Thank you.
We're good? Okay. All right, so I'll say, again, see you guys next month. But hey, look, I check my emails all the time. I try to be responsive. So if you come across something and you're struggling and you can't figure out my video and you can't figure out from the solution and you need to meet me in like my office, like a Zoom meeting, just let me know and we can set something up there as well. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, guys, I'm gonna
Thank you.
thank you. See you guys. I'm gonna go ahead and stop, and again, just send me an email if there's an issue, and then we'll see you on the 14th. Okay, guys.